played on Thursday, so we can just skip right on past that train wreck down in South Beach. But it doesn't get a lot prettier after that. UCF loses to Navy after giving up 17 points in the fourth quarter and scoring none. The Gus bus has completely stalled out.
Yeah, it has.
I don't even know what to do mentally from here.
I don't either. I don't know what happened. And I watched this UCF game. I went out of my way to download the CBS Sports app, to go in and log in under somebody else's account so that I could watch this game. And
it was Stefan Gillum.
And it was all going great. And then in the fourth quarter, it was like they decided we don't know how to play this game anymore. And it was rough to watch. And of course, the half-empty stadium in Annapolis got all fired up, and UCF ends up losing this game to an 0-3 Navy team. I don't know. I can't imagine what Gus Malzahn must be thinking right now in order to figure out a way to put the wheels back on this bus.
I don't know. I mean, I was of the mindset that after the Louisville loss, I could rationalize with road loss, really good quarterback. You know, it was a tight game. You lost your quarterback there at the end, and then at least you have conference play coming up.
Right.
Well, now that was the first conference game, and you lost that one, and you did so in a way that was reminiscent of these bad games we've seen over the last year. I'm not going to put it all on Gus, but we need to at least be honest to the situation, because you and I were hyping the crap out of that man coaching this team.
Yeah.
And it looks a lot like it did when Josh Heupel was coaching this team.
It does.
They can't defend anybody. And I've seen this happen so many times in my football watching life, that triple option, it doesn't matter how bad your team is or how bad that your opponent is. When they run that triple option, if you're not gap sound, as a football coach would say, you're screwed.
You're absolutely right.
Fourth quarter, Navy just ran all over UCF.
They did, and nobody was playing containment. Nobody was maintaining their gaps. They were overcommitting everywhere. And the defense for UCF was bad enough walking into that game. There was a level of exposure from there. I'm with you. I'm not going to put it all on Gus, because I know most of these aren't his recruits. He got some transfers. He's still dealing with somebody else's team that he's got to strategize for. But you're supposed to beat Navy, like, period. It doesn't matter. You could have ran a Popka Blue Darters team out there. You're supposed to beat Navy.
16.5-point favorites going into that one. You're coming off of a loss.
Yeah.
And I know you're breaking in a new quarterback, but it's not like this team was atrocious. It honestly I think in some ways it makes it worse that we did see them come out and play with a little bit of pizzazz. I was actually impressed with what I saw from Mikey Keene early. I'm like, all right, this kid's sharp. I think UCF might have something here. And you let it slip out of your grasp. To me, Stefan, the season's torpedoed. I don't think there's any coming back from this.
So I'm almost there with you, only because I'm still in that space of, well, if they win out, I don't think they're going to win out. But if they do,
thing. If we're being
there's
realistic,
an opportunity there. And you're right. I saw Mikey Keene. Even Gatewood looked good. I'm like, switch them up, put them in. I don't care who you're using. They're both looking like they can take this offense forward. But if your defense can't stop anybody, no matter how many points you go up by, if they can't stop the comeback, it doesn't really matter. I agree with you. The season may be torpedoed. The only thing I care about now is that Cincinnati game. That's all I care about. And my question to you is, do we roll over and let Cincinnati win so that they can go into the college football playoff, or do we take them down so that we can have a shot at that?
I'm glad that you said that, because had I said that, you all would have crushed me for it. So I'm just gonna nod my head and agree with what Stefan said. You gotta let that. This is their year. You gotta let them have it.
Yeah. Knowing that you're going into the Big 12 in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm never going to advocate for actually laying down and letting somebody win.
We lay down as fans, not lay down. You go out there and play the game, of course. Nobody's going to go out there and tank so that Cincinnati can have the win. But in the way that I view this, to me, there's no benefit in UCF winning that game.
There's none whatsoever. You're absolutely right. In fact, there's a bigger benefit in them losing that game, because let's say UCF comes back next year and goes undefeated and runs some kind of gauntlet against who they have on the schedule next year. It benefits them better to be in the American, to have Cincinnati have made it to the college football playoff, even though they probably still won't get invited. It still benefits them more to not win that game.
Yeah, and I think the conference gets a kickback if you make it to the playoff. So it's actually beneficial financially for UCF to lose to Cincinnati.
Yeah, And we had a texter text in, Navy just ran for another 5 yards. We understand that Navy didn't run way more in terms of yardage, but in that fourth quarter, UCF could not stop the run.
They could
not. No matter how many yards it was.
And if you're not going to stop the run, then you need to score yourself, and they didn't do any of that in the fourth quarter.
The game was so difficult that I couldn't turn it off to go watch the other games because I was so ticked off that UCF was letting Navy back in this game that I had to watch and make sure that they didn't end up losing, and they ended up losing.
Yeah, there was a lot going on at 3:30. I was all over the place on Saturday. Florida also blew it, and just when I was starting, this is what I get. All right. This is what I get for believing in the Florida Gators. I came on the radio and I groveled. I apologize. I'm so sorry, Gator Nation. You deserve better than this after that moral loss to Alabama. Henry Jones, who I was trashing, this guy's a real quarterback. I take back everything I said, and I will continue to waffle on the Gators and as they continue to waffle on this season. That Gators team is what I saw beat up on bad USF and bad FAU, and I don't know what the hell rabbit they pulled out of their hat against Alabama, but they're back.
You were the one that said that they needed to go up in the rankings for losing to Alabama.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
On hindsight, they should free fall out of the top 25. That was pathetic.
I was extremely happy to see no other SEC team besides Alabama and Georgia in the top 10 because they don't deserve to be there, period. Arkansas was a fraud. Ole Miss was a fraud. Kentucky still is a fraud. Don't you dare text in at 50857 and try to tell me that Kentucky is the new SEC powerhouse that Alabama and Georgia have to watch out for. We're not concerned with Auburn nor LSU. It is a two-team conference, period.
And those are two really good teams.
They are very good.
Which is why I can't meet you if you're going to sit here and spout that the SEC is overrated and all this nonsense.
Stop it. They're overrated.
The fact that they're outputting those two programs, those are by far the two best football teams in the country. Both of them play in the SEC, so they're anchoring the entire conference.
They are, but that doesn't make the conference a powerhouse. It makes these two teams a powerhouse. And the second team in that equation gets swapped out every year.
There's usually a third. There's usually a third that makes their way, and Auburn might be for real, and LSU, and they're gonna.
You're gonna do this again?
Well, they cannibalize. They
Roll with Kentucky.
They cannibalize each other.
No, well, you can say that about every single conference, though, and that's the thing that I dislike the most about the SEC.
So it's not that you're trying to pump up anybody else. You're saying the SEC is just like everybody.
The SEC is just like everybody else. You could say the same thing about the Big Ten. Oh, they beat each other out. And that's why you can say the same thing about all of these other conferences because they all beat the crap out of each other. And they have one or two teams at the top that are decent. They're just not as great as Alabama.
All right. I'll let you have your victory lap today.
Right,
shout out to FSU for picking up their first win despite many efforts to hand that one back to Syracuse.
Heck yeah.
And the story that nobody wants to talk about is Mackenzie Milton got benched. I guess we're just going to ignore that.
Of course. If it would have mattered more if he wasn't playing for FSU. But we have put FSU on the shelf as a story worth talking about for the last couple of weeks because of how they played. So Mackenzie Milton getting benched doesn't.
Yeah, it kind of goes back, and I'll pat you on the back once again. This is a good day to be Stefan.
It is.
Is that this kind of goes back to something you said before the season started. I was getting all excited about these teams in the NFL and in college that weren't going to win anything, and I said, yeah, but they're so fascinating. And you're like, yeah, but not for long. Once they start losing, you won't be interested anymore. And you're kind of right.
Yeah. We don't FSU, like to watch losers.
I have a really hard time watching FSU games right now. Jacksonville, I'm not quite out on, and
give it a week.
Urban Meyer keeps developing new ways to keep us interested. Oh, man. All right, that's enough.